Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, healing from these relationships, and simply making sense of them. We're going to take on the issue of sarcasm today. So let's talk a little bit about why is sarcasm so challenging in narcissistic relationships. Well, when it comes to sarcasm, it's a case of they can dish it out, but they can't take it. And what's interesting is that interpretation of sarcasm, like interpreting someone saying something sarcastic, basically our ability to make sense of any kind of sarcasm, it actually relates to specific areas of the brain, meaning parts of the brain like the striatum and the frontal gyrus, or gyri, and obviously the language areas of the brain that comprehend and interpret language. And this means, interestingly, that people who have strokes that affect specific brain areas are actually not able to understand sarcasm anymore. To be able to interpret sarcasm requires the ability to be able to hear and interpret tone and facial expressions, because the language by itself actually doesn't tell you anything. Hey Johnny, are you having a good day? Oh yeah, buddy, I am having a great day. If that was how Johnny was saying it, clearly Johnny was not having a great day. But if you didn't have all those areas of the brain working, or maybe just saw the words written out, and all you heard were the words without the inflection, ugh, great day, you may actually believe that Johnny was having indeed a great day. We also use sarcasm to communicate dislike. Did you like the movie? I loved the movie. Who wouldn't love a movie that is just one giant advertisement where I get to lose brain cells? Didn't like the movie, did they? We use sarcasm for better or for worse all the time. We will use language that literally may express one emotion or preference, and then use our tone or our facial expression to convey something very different. Sarcasm is actually something that children take a minute to learn. Their brains have to develop to a certain point to be able to actually understand it. And interestingly, there was a study by Nicholson and colleagues that showed that higher empathy in children was associated with a better ability to detect sarcasm. The same applies to adults. More empathy, better able to understand sarcasm. And we know who doesn't have that much empathy. So as you can already guess, narcissistic folks who already have marginal empathy, they will struggle in understanding your sarcasm and will often view your sarcasm as an attack. But since narcissism is also all about hypocrisy, they will have no problem dishing it out, but will become angry if you use sarcasm. The challenge is that sarcasm is tricky. It can imply passive aggression, contempt, impatience, disgust, often not very nice stuff. Sometimes it can just be someone making fun of themselves. For example, if you showed up somewhere 2 hours early, you might say, oh no, I actually love waiting. And you know what? It may be my chance to grab that nap I clearly need. May use sarcasm at a challenging moment of insecurity. Comedians use sarcasm all the time. Sometimes it's mean, sometimes it's silly. Sarcasm is also an indirect communication, a way of not answering a question directly. So someone says, are you doing okay? Sarcastic response would be, sure, why wouldn't I be? I am, after all, the girl who has it all figured out, right? Whether it's insecurity or fear or discomfort, sarcasm becomes a way to say something indirectly, especially when it feels vulnerable or uncomfortable. But as you can imagine, sarcasm can cause all kinds of relationship communication problems. Interestingly, narcissistic folks use sarcasm a lot. It is often quite contemptuous. Yes, darling, I love listening to the oh so exciting stories about your genius colleagues who spend 2 weeks doing what AI could do in 2 seconds. It's exactly how I want to spend my day. It's a way for narcissistic people to hold power. It feels demanding and uncomfortable. It puts a wedge in the way of intimacy and empathy. It often ends the conversation. In the face of sarcasm, we may hold back more and more to avoid the sarcastic digs. And if we were to call the narcissistic person out on their sarcasm, you know what they're going to say? That you're too sensitive. But what if you roll out the sarcasm? Let's say they tell you about their day golfing after you've been home with kids or taking care of a sick family member, and you say, yeah, it's just wonderful to hear about your arduous day of golf while I was dealing with a toddler and a sick elderly parent. I sure hope you sunk all of those putts. Try that little bit of sarcasm and see how that works out for you in a narcissistic relationship. Don't actually do it. You'll be met with rage, and frankly, it's not even healthy relationship behavior for any of us. But it's also a double standard. If you react to their sarcasm, they will lose it. But if they deliver sarcasm and you call it out, then you're too sensitive and you don't understand sarcasm. So it's just better to steer clear. Even if you use sarcasm in a less passive-aggressive way, the narcissistic or antagonistic person in your life may ask, "What are you doing today?" And you come back with, "Oh, you know, curing cancer, planning my solo journey on the Silk Road," when in fact you were doing something ordinary like the taxes or folding the laundry. They still may look at you strangely and not quite get it, whereas someone with a bit more empathy may chuckle and even acknowledge that doing those taxes or folding that laundry is sort of ordinary and a miserable kind of a day. It can be, especially early in a narcissistic relationship, a bit shocking when you witness the hypocrisy that they get to be sarcastic and you cannot. You may not even believe it at first and do a quick, "Really?" at them, and they will continue to be angry with you. Part of this is made complicated by the thin-skinned reactivity that we see in any kind of antagonistic person that's narcissistic. And then when you mix that in with the idea that narcissistic people don't want to be seen as sensitive, even though they are, but they don't like the shame that gets pulled forth out of them when they are vulnerable, that's where sarcasm becomes a very complicated one-way street. Sarcasm can sometimes be a tension breaker. I don't know, let's say you spill something on yourself and you say, meh, I always thought this jacket would look better in orange anyhow. That sort of pro-social sarcasm can sort of ease a bummer moment or a misstep and maybe even make other people feel comfortable. It certainly beats you screaming your head off or storming off because some orange juice spilled on your jacket. Sometimes, even if you try that kind of self-effacing sarcasm in a narcissistic relationship, they will look at you oddly and say, "Huh? What? No, you don't." And you may be caught off guard. The mix of their empathy deficit and the fact that the narcissistic person isn't really paying attention to you, and the interpretive ineptitude that makes all of this an issue, think about it. I am always struck when the narcissistic people I know who are really smart can actually seem really slow-witted when they're faced with sarcasm in any form. Sarcasm is a defense of sorts, a way of protecting ourselves to share uncomfortable information or perhaps make light of an uncomfortable situation. With sarcasm in general, we want to be careful that we aren't deploying it in a passive-aggressive, hostile manner, which is basically all of the internet and social media. But above all else, recognize that while the narcissistic people out there may use sarcasm liberally and regularly, and gaslight you if you react to their sarcasm, if you use it, expect rage or just dismissive contempt. Sarcasm, like so many interactions in a narcissistic relationship, is not a two-way street. So good luck with that, and thanks again.